There comes a moment in life when you must pause and ask yourself, whose voice is directing my steps? Every day, the world tries to pour its noise into you, opinions, judgments, expectations. Without realizing it, you begin living as a reflection of someone else's thoughts, not the truth of your own being. The greatest tragedy is not failure or struggle, it is living a life that was never yours. Today, it is time to step out of that invisible prison and reclaim the authority over your mind. Most people move through life wearing identities stitched together from other people's expectations. They imitate what society rewards, they bend to what family approves, and they silence the voice inside that urges them towards something real. This habit of living through borrowed identities is so deeply ingrained that most never even notice it. Until you recognize how much of you is constructed from outside noise, you remain a hostage to it. Awareness is not a soft idea here, it is the first crack in the wall that keeps you from your true self. Opinions come at you like a constant storm, judgments, suggestions, assumptions, labels. But opinions are nothing more than passing clouds, shifting with someone's mood, their past, their culture, their fears. They have no authority unless you hand it to them. When you stop treating opinions as verdicts and start seeing them as temporary gusts of wind, they lose their power. Your inner voice must grow louder than the surrounding chaos, because clarity is born only when you can hear your own consciousness above everyone else's noise. People react to you from their conditioning, not from your truth. Their opinions reflect their wounds, their insecurities, and their personal narratives more than they ever reflect your reality. The moment you understand this, you stop tying your self-worth to their reactions. This is where psychological independence begins. The understanding that freedom is not an external circumstance, but an internal mastery. And nothing binds you more quietly and more dangerously than the human craving for approval. Approval seems harmless, but it becomes a subtle addiction that dictates how you speak, how you move, how you exist. If you want to reclaim your life, you must learn to stand alone without feeling abandoned. Solitude is not emptiness, it is the space where you finally meet yourself without distortion. Decisions made from awareness, not pressure, shape a life of strength rather than regret. Every action taken to satisfy someone else weakens your foundation, while every action rooted in your inner clarity fortifies it. Build a mind that is difficult to influence, a mind steady enough to stay centered, even when the world tries to pull it in every direction. When you stop mirroring the world, you stop living a borrowed existence. Your presence becomes your voice. You move through life with a steadiness that does not demand agreement from anyone. Authenticity becomes your power, not because it impresses others, but because it aligns you with the core of who you are. A life lived from within has a different gravity. It pulls the right experiences, the right people and the right opportunities toward you without force. When you no longer reflect other people's opinions, you finally step into a life that is truly your own. Opinions arrive like sudden weather, unpredictable, unstable, shaped by forces you cannot see and do not control. One moment they praise you, the next they doubt you, and none of it truly has anything to do with who you are. People speak from their moods, their beliefs, their frustrations, and their unexamined thoughts. To treat these shifting expressions as truth is to hand over the steering wheel of your life to a storm that never settles. Every opinion formed about you is filtered through someone's personal history. Their upbringing, fears, insecurities, and unresolved emotions cling to every word they speak. When someone judges you, they are rarely describing your reality, they are exposing their own. If you absorb these judgments without awareness, you begin to shape yourself according to distortions born from someone else's inner turbulence. The more you internalize these outside voices, the further you drift from your own clarity. Your decisions become reactive instead of conscious, and your direction becomes tangled in the demands and expectations of others. Opinions then become chains, silent but heavy, pulling you away from the path that aligns with your truth. Breaking these chains requires understanding that external voices gain power only when you surrender your attention to them. When you recognize opinions as temporary clouds, you stop trying to catch them. You stop reorganizing your life every time someone changes their tone or shifts their stance. Instead of bending yourself to please or appease, you develop an inner steadiness that remains untouched by external turbulence. This steadiness is not indifference. It is a deeper intelligence that knows your worth cannot be decided by someone else's passing thoughts. A mind that stops chasing validation becomes a mind that can finally see clearly. Without the fog of others' opinions, you begin to perceive your own intentions, desires and direction with sharp precision. You act not out of fear or approval seeking but from a grounded awareness. And in that state, no cloud, no matter how dark, loud or dramatic, can define the sky you carry within you. Most people spend their entire lives drowning in outer noise, unable to hear the quiet force within themselves. The world shouts its demands, its judgments, its expectations, and that constant chatter buries the inner voice that actually knows where you should go. When you cannot hear yourself, you end up living a life shaped by pressure instead of purpose. The tragedy is not that people misguide you, but that you never learn to trust the deeper intelligence that lives inside you. Your inner voice is not weak, it has simply been smothered under layers of opinions, fears and habits that were never yours to begin with. Every time you choose approval over truth, that voice fades a little more. Every time you silence your intuition to avoid conflict, it sinks deeper into the background. Eventually, you move through the world reacting instead of choosing, pulled by currents you never intended to follow. This loss of inner direction is what keeps people restless, confused and dependent on the noise around them. To make your inner voice louder, you must create a distance between yourself and the endless chatter that surrounds you. This does not mean rejecting the world, it means refusing to let it dominate your mind. When you stop absorbing every passing opinion and stop internalizing every judgment, you create space for your own clarity to rise. Without that space, you cannot distinguish your truth from the chaos fed to you by others. Strengthening your inner voice requires a kind of inner discipline. You must learn to sit with your own thoughts, to question your impulses, and to challenge the beliefs you borrowed from others without ever testing them. When you stop running from silence, you begin to hear insights that do not come from fear or confusion, but from an awareness that is calm, steady and unshakable. This awareness cuts through the noise like a blade. Once your inner voice becomes stronger than external noise, your actions stop being reactions. You move with intention rather than panic. You speak from clarity instead of insecurity. You choose paths because they align with your being, not because they earn approval. And when the world grows loud again, as it always does, you remain centered. The noise may surround you, but it can no longer rule you because your guidance now comes from within, not from the shifting chaos outside. People interpret you through the lens of their own conditioning, and that conditioning is often a maze of old fears, hidden wounds, cultural molds and unexamined beliefs. When someone judges you, criticizes you or tries to define you, they are not revealing your truth. they are revealing the framework of their own mind. Their reactions are shaped by their past, not your reality. To mistake their conditioning for an evaluation of your worth is to hand your identity over to someone who doesn't even understand themselves. A person who carries insecurity will see threat where none exists. A person shaped by fear will try to restrict anything that looks like freedom. A person who has never dared to step beyond their comfort will doubt anyone who does. Their opinions and reactions are mirrors of their inner world, but people often absorb them as if they were universal truth. This confusion creates a dangerous dependency. The more you internalize their projections, the more you shrink to fit their limitations. When you begin to see the mechanics behind people's reactions, you stop taking them personally. You recognize that what they say about you is actually a conversation they are having with their own history. Their disapproval does not expose your weakness, it exposes the boundaries of their understanding. Their praise does not validate your essence, it merely reflects their personal preferences. This awareness frees you from the exhausting cycle of chasing validation and avoiding criticism. Once you detach from their conditioning, you begin to protect your inner space with a different kind of strength. You no longer bend your identity to avoid discomfort or reshape yourself to gain approval. Instead, you learn to stand firmly in your truth even when others cannot comprehend it. Their inability to see your depth does not diminish it. Their limited vision does not reduce the vastness of who you are. Their confusion about you does not mean you must be confused about yourself. When you stop letting other people's conditioning dictate your direction, your clarity becomes unshakable. You stop behaving like a reflection of their shadows and start living from your own light. You act from awareness rather than reaction, from inner steadiness rather than outer pressure. And in that shift, your life regains its shape. Not the shape others tried to force upon you, but the shape that was always meant to be yours. True freedom does not come from circumstances or from the approval of others, it begins in the mind. As long as your thoughts, your choices and your actions are dictated by what others expect, you remain a prisoner of invisible chains. You may appear free on the outside, moving through life with a smile or confidence, but the moment someone challenges you, doubts you or disagrees with you, the foundations of your peace tremble. Real liberation begins when your decisions arise from your own understanding rather than someone else's judgment. The mind that is shaped by external voices is never at rest. It constantly seeks validation, constantly measures itself against shifting standards and never finds stability. Each opinion, each piece of advice, each social expectation becomes a subtle form of control, and the more you absorb it, the less room there is for your own clarity. Psychological independence is not simply ignoring others, it is developing the ability to anchor your mind in your own discernment, to observe the world without letting it determine your inner state. When your inner space becomes sovereign, your reactions are no longer automatic or driven by fear of judgment. You begin to see every encounter as a test of your own awareness rather than a measure of your worth. Criticism no longer shakes you, praise no longer inflates you, and the noise of the world loses the power to dictate your peace. This does not mean you stop caring or stop engaging. It means you have learned the skill of standing firm in your own understanding, of allowing your inner compass to guide you without interference. Developing this mastery requires consistent effort. It requires the courage to confront the impulses and beliefs that are not truly yours, to separate the conditioned responses from your authentic self. It requires patience and vigilance because the mind is subtle. And society is relentless in reinforcing conformity. Yet every moment you reclaim your thoughts, every choice you make from awareness rather than obligation strengthens the foundation of your independence. Once your mind is no longer a mirror of others, freedom becomes tangible. You act with clarity, you speak with integrity, and your presence carries a certainty that is unshakable. Your life begins to take shape not from fear, not from expectation, but from the power of your own awareness. Psychological independence is the key to becoming unmovable, to living a life that is truly yours, and to standing in the fire of your own truth without compromise. Humans have an innate craving for approval, and it quietly governs more of our lives than we realize. From childhood, we are taught to seek validation from parents, teachers, peers, and society at large. Every compliment, every smile, every nod reinforces the habit of looking outward for our sense of worth. At first, it seems harmless, even natural, but over time this craving becomes a silent addiction, a subtle chain that shapes our decisions, our speech, and even our dreams. The need for approval makes people fragile. A single word of criticism can shatter confidence, while a fleeting compliment can create dependence. Decisions are no longer made from clarity or inner conviction, they are filtered through the lens of how others will perceive them. People often choose safety over authenticity, conformity over courage, because the imagined judgment of others has become more real than their own understanding of truth. The mind becomes a mirror, reflecting everyone else's expectations, while the self slowly disappears. Approval addiction is dangerous because it is invisible. You may feel free, you may feel strong, but as long as you seek validation, your freedom is conditional. Every choice carries the weight of potential approval or disapproval. Every step is measured against someone else's standard. Even your successes can feel hollow if they are not recognized, and every failure feels devastating if it provokes criticism. The more you rely on external approval, the less control you have over your own life. Breaking free from this invisible bondage requires relentless awareness. You must notice when your choices are motivated by fear of judgment rather than alignment with your inner truth. You must confront the subtle ways your mind seeks praise, avoids conflict, or hides behind masks to be liked. Each act of courage, each decision taken from your own understanding rather than others' expectations weakens the addiction. Over time, a new pattern emerges, one of self-reliance, strength, and clarity that is independent of approval. The moment you let go of the need for validation, you reclaim your power. You no longer bend to opinions, manipulate appearances, or suppress your desires to be accepted. Your actions begin to flow from awareness and inner conviction rather than fear or desire for recognition. Freedom becomes tangible because it is no longer conditional on others. Life starts to feel expansive, raw and real, and for the first time, you begin to live fully in alignment with who you truly are. Humans have an innate craving for approval, and it quietly governs more of our lives than we realize. From childhood, we are taught to seek validation from parents, teachers, peers, and society at large. Every compliment, every smile, every nod reinforces the habit of looking outward for our sense of worth. At first, it seems harmless, even natural, but over time this craving becomes a silent addiction, a subtle chain that shapes our decisions, our speech, and even our dreams. The need for approval makes people fragile. A single word of criticism can shatter confidence, while a fleeting compliment can create dependence. Decisions are no longer made from clarity or inner conviction, they are filtered through the lens of how others will perceive them. People often choose safety over authenticity, conformity over courage, because the imagined judgment of others has become more real than their own understanding of truth. The mind becomes a mirror, reflecting everyone else's expectations while the self slowly disappears. Approval addiction is dangerous because it is invisible. You may feel free, you may feel strong, but as long as you seek validation, your freedom is conditional. Every choice carries the weight of potential approval or disapproval. Every step is measured against someone else's standard. Even your successes can feel hollow if they are not recognized, and every failure feels devastating if it provokes criticism. The more you rely on external approval, the less control you have over your own life. Breaking free from this invisible bondage requires relentless awareness. You must notice when your choices are motivated by fear of judgment rather than alignment with your inner truth. You must confront the subtle ways your mind seeks praise, avoids conflict, or hides behind masks to be liked. Each act of courage, each decision taken from your own understanding rather than others' expectations weakens the addiction. Over time, a new pattern emerges, one of self-reliance, strength and clarity that is independent of approval. The moment you let go of the need for validation, you reclaim your power. You no longer bend to opinions, manipulate appearances, or suppress your desires to be accepted. Your actions begin to flow from awareness and inner conviction rather than fear or desire for recognition. Freedom becomes tangible because it is no longer conditional on others. Life starts to feel expansive, raw and real, and for the first time, you begin to live fully in alignment with who you truly are. A life dictated by pressure is a life lived outside your own power. When you make decisions based on fear, expectation, or the imagined judgment of others, you surrender your clarity and your freedom. Every choice that is forced upon you, every compromise made to satisfy someone else, builds layers of resentment and confusion. Even if the action appears easy, it carries the weight of disconnection from your own inner guidance. The mind that acts under pressure is never truly alive, it moves, but it does not create. Conscious decisions, no matter how difficult, are the foundation of strength. When you pause, observe, and act from awareness rather than impulse, the outcome becomes less important than the integrity of the action itself. Growth is not found in convenience or in avoiding discomfort. It is found in alignment, in the deliberate choice to honor your own understanding of what is right and true. Each decision made with awareness strengthens the mind, sharpens perception, and anchors you in your own authority. Pressure often disguises itself as urgency, obligation, or expectation, and it is relentless in its demand. If you do not resist it consciously, it infiltrates your choices unnoticed. You may convince yourself that you are acting wisely or practically, but a decision made under pressure is rarely pure. It leaves residue in your mind, doubt, regret, and the subtle erosion of self-trust. Recognizing when pressure is influencing your actions is the first step toward reclaiming control. Living in alignment with awareness requires discipline and courage. It demands that you pause before reacting, question the motives behind every choice, and separate what is essential from what is imposed. This is not a passive practice, it is an active engagement with life, a refusal to allow circumstance, authority, or fear to dictate your path. The more consistently you act from awareness, the more resilient and centered your mind becomes until external pressures lose their power to sway you. A life guided by conscious choice rather than pressure is a life of integrity and clarity. You begin to act in ways that serve your growth rather than the expectations of others. Difficult decisions no longer feel like burdens but opportunities to strengthen your sense of self. The world may continue to push, pull and demand, but your actions remain rooted in awareness. In this grounded state, you are no longer a product of circumstance, you are the author of your own life. A mind that is easily swayed is a mind that has no foundation. Every passing comment, every judgment, and every expectation has the power to disturb it. When your sense of self is fragile, even praise can be dangerous because it creates dependency, and criticism can feel like destruction. People who allow themselves to be shaped by others rarely act from clarity, they react, they imitate, and they carry the weight of others' moods and beliefs as if they were their own. The stronger your inner foundation, the less space there is for this kind of intrusion. Stability of mind does not come from avoiding the world or shutting yourself away from influence. It comes from developing the ability to observe without absorbing, to listen without surrendering, and to engage without losing center. When you witness opinions, whether acclaim or condemnation, as external phenomena, you create a space between yourself and the noise. This space is where strength is born, where your mind begins to act from awareness rather than impulse or fear. To build a mind that is difficult to influence, you must train it to distinguish between what belongs to you and what belongs to others. Every thought, every belief, and every judgment should be examined. Does this arise from my understanding, or is it borrowed, imposed, or conditioned? The practice of constant questioning strengthens the mind, and with strength comes resilience. When your foundation is secure, external pressures and opinions no longer dictate your inner state. Consistency is key. Every time you notice a reaction to someone else's opinion, you have the opportunity to pause and reclaim your center. Each conscious pause, each decision to remain unmoved by praise or criticism builds the neural pathways of independence. Over time, this practice transforms the mind into a fortress that is not closed off, but is selective about what it lets affect it. Influence is no longer automatic, it is filtered through awareness, discernment, and clarity. A mind anchored in its own stability becomes unshakable. No criticism can belittle it, no expectation can constrain it, no approval can inflate it. When your mental foundation is strong, you act with precision, clarity, and purpose. Others' judgments become irrelevant because they no longer penetrate the inner citadel you have built. In this state, influence is no longer a threat, it becomes a tool you can use consciously rather than a force that rules you unconsciously. A mind that is easily swayed is a mind that has no foundation. Every passing comment, every judgment, and every expectation has the power to disturb it. When your sense of self is fragile, even praise can be dangerous because it creates dependency, and criticism can feel like destruction. People who allow themselves to be shaped by others rarely act from clarity, they react, they imitate, and they carry the weight of others' moods and beliefs as if they were their own. The stronger your inner foundation, the less space there is for this kind of intrusion. Stability of mind does not come from avoiding the world or shutting yourself away from influence. It comes from developing the ability to observe without absorbing, to listen without surrendering, and to engage without losing center. When you witness opinions, whether acclaim or condemnation, as external phenomena, you create a space between yourself and the noise. This space is where strength is born, where your mind begins to act from awareness rather than impulse or fear. You were not born to be a mirror reflecting borrowed ideas. You were born as a flame, unique, bright, and alive. Let the fire within you burn away the fear of judgment. Let it guide you toward a life shaped not by opinions, but by awareness and truth. When you stop being a reflection of others, you finally become the creator of your own path. And that is the beginning of real power.